Welcome to another exciting and informative episode of the Entrepreneurs Podcast, a place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. And today is no different. We definitely have a great entrepreneur and business owner on the show today. They're not always the same. But before we get to our entrepreneur and business owner, I want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by Shield Wolf Strongholds, a wealth growth and protection company. When it comes to estate planning, when it comes to employee benefits, when it comes to retirement planning, when it comes to life insurance, if your plan ain't Shield Wolf, your plan ain't strong. If you are a business owner that wants you and your employees to retire higher than you would have prior, make sure you visit shieldwolfstrong.com or text or call 904-822-4262. Now to our guest. David Cinelli is not your average realtor. He's one of Canada's top performing real estate professionals, ranked in the top 1% in nationwide, with nearly 2 decades of experience helping clients buy, sell, and build wealth across Toronto's high-stakes property market. Known for blending data-driven insights with magnetic personality, David brings clarity, strategy, and energy to one of life's biggest financial decisions. With an MBA, a background in mathematics and marketing, and a deep understanding of Toronto's ever-evolving market, David helps buyers, sellers, and investors navigate complexity with confidence. He's also a familiar face on national television as co-host of HGTV's Hot Market, where he showcases Toronto's top listings and teaches millions about the power of real estate investing. Whether he's breaking down market trends, sharing negotiation strategies, or revealing the real truths behind luxury real estate, David makes real estate make sense and makes it exciting too. David Cinelli, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. No problem, man. How long you been doing what you're doing now?
I've been licensed as a realtor for about 10 and a half years, but I got my start purchasing properties 21 years ago, I think. And I just followed basically in my dad's footsteps. My dad had started when he was 20. And then, so basically after having my school and starting to be an analyst, kind of realized, yeah, I think that real estate is got to be part of your portfolio. I think it can earn you tons and tons of wealth. So that's basically started about 21 years ago, probably. Yeah, around there. So that's where it really started.
Man, it seems like based on your background, you don't just think it can make you money. You know it can make you money.
Yeah, I got to a point where when I first started getting in real estate 21 years ago, when I was buying stuff, I saw like a little bit of not loopholes, but realizing like how equity can build and how you're able to build like an empire. And we were younger at the time, it's like 25, 26. And I was teaching other people about pulling equity and changing the property, how you can add value to it. And it's to a point where I was making other people like my cousins rich by but them listening to what I was doing. I was like, I only had a couple of properties at the time. I'm like, oh my God, like they listened to what I said, look at my floor plan, and they just kind of carried it out and did really, really well for themselves. So yeah, I think it's there's a definite way to make money in real estate, and it doesn't matter the type of market as well. As long as you know the trends of what's happening, I think you can always make money in any market.
Yes, absolutely. That said, doing it for 21 years, licensed for, did you say 13 or 10?
10 and a half years. Yeah,
10 and a half? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it'll be 11 years in this May. I got licensed, actually practicing in May. So yeah, almost 11 years coming up.
Oh yeah, that half is important. Is it? Oh yeah, most of it, 10 years, almost. Oh yeah, 10 and a half, right?
10 and a half. It's like when a kid, when you talk to them, like, how old are you? I'm 2 and a half or 2 3/4. That's kind of like the same idea, right? It's like, well, I'm not really 11 yet, but I'm just over 10 years.
Man, hey man, that means vigorous honesty. Is there nothing that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
Honestly, well, there's a lot, obviously. Like there's just so much, if I would have known maybe some of the stuff I knew about investment properties and figuring out different ways of pulling equity and the connections and how you approach real estate, there's so many things you could have learned. I could have told myself years ago. But the problem is what I know now is that maybe back then you wouldn't have listened to me. So like a lot of it is experience. And that's the thing I tell a lot of people, like anytime there's a bad situation, whether you're a landlord or whether you're owning a property, at the time there's a setback, that's always a learning experience. Don't take it as a negative, because it doesn't, and we can apply that to life as well. But especially with real estate, it's like, well, if you have a bad tenant or the tenants are doing something else, like what are you learning from that? Like what were your mistakes and how do you improve on that? So I think every kind of step of the way and every new challenge happens every market. Right now here in Toronto, we are having a buyer's market, a really, really strong buyer's market. Sales are really like taking a hit. There is a lot of, not like lack of buyer confidence. But what I'm telling people now is like, listen, if you can persevere, and I'm telling my agents that I work with, that I mentor with, if you can make it through this market, don't give up. Like you are going to be a killer when the market actually turns around. So that's another thing I wanted probably would have told myself as another younger agent. It's like, it doesn't matter what type of a market you're in, right? You can persevere with that and you can be successful in that market. You just got to keep doing what you're doing. You got to do all the positive things. And don't look when you're actually having like a crazy great year. Like, again, don't get too high. From my hockey days, I used to be a goalie back in the day, like played some professional hockey. We always would say, like, especially in net, when you're a goalie, you can't get too high and you can't get too low, because all of a sudden if you're thinking like nothing's in the, like as a goalie, if you're thinking like you're king shit, excuse my language, if you think you're too high, next thing you know, you get like 10 goals get scored behind you. And it happens too if you're too low. Like you can't have that volatile, like personality, because your teammates and people will see that around you. Same with your clients, right? When things are negative, you have to be the beacon of hope and like saying, no, everything's kind of steady, like everything's nice and calm. And I find that when the market gets too high, there's a panic stage. So using those metaphors really, really has helped me throughout the years. And just now I'm seeing it now, like my younger days set me up for that. So experience really does help. So yeah, there's a lot of learning experience if you can go from there.
Oh yeah, it's interesting what you just said. You said, yeah, I mean, I would go back and tell myself this, but I don't think if myself back then would get it. It kind of reminds me of the analogy that Neil deGrasse Tyson made. He said, some of this information might be the equivalent to giving a baby a set of car keys. No matter what even if this baby knows where these keys are supposed to go, due to the limitations of this baby, you can't push the steering, you can't push the gas or the brakes, you can't see over the dashboard. And yes, I got the set of keys. Yes, I got this information that I needed, but this information does me no good in the mental mind state that I am now. That's very self-aware of you.
Well, yeah, and I try to explain like the experience is huge. You'd be surprised how many like realtors, for example, here in Toronto, like they're trying to help people buy and sell, and they've never done it themselves. So I'm always questioning them, like, well, how do you know their pitfalls? How do you really be empathetic with somebody if they've never owned a property, if they never had these problems? If you're supposed to be an investor, well, once you want to talk to an investor who's a realtor who's an investor himself, because they're going to see like, oh, you must have a ton of stories. Well, if you don't, like, how do you navigate through something like this? How are you going to know that, right? Experience is key. It's huge. And I can teach you book smart and all that kind of stuff too, but you're going to have to go out and experience it. You're going to have to see the pitfalls. You're going to have to see like, hey, this was easy, this was hard. And again, doing is so much more, not more pragmatic, but it's the experience you get by doing it yourself is immeasurable. Like you cannot put those into a textbook at all, right? So it's like, yeah, absolutely. But again, like, and I said to myself, if I think about things what I thought about like 21, 22 years ago and how immature even I was looking at properties and knowing what I know now. And it's like, no, you dumbass. Like you could have done this. But again, you had to go through all that pain and suffering. Like I almost sold properties at a loss because I was frustrated and stuff too. And it's like, if I would have sat back and said, well, I would have had a mentor and said, if you do this, this, and this, here's how you could improve. But I didn't know that until later. Like in 2008, for example, we have a sixplex, which we still own, my wife and I. I had bought it before we got married. And then when we got married, obviously she's on title too. So my wife was helping me in the beginning. And it was a frustrating property. It was older. It was my first property. It didn't really have a lot of experience. And I was always getting these phone calls. Hey, this is not working. This is not doing this. And it was just frustrating over and over again. And I almost tried to sell it like literally at a loss. And it was like, well, not a loss, but it was like a very small gain. And I think I had an offer for like $800,000. We paid $690 for it, 800,000. And it's like, no, I'm like, I was stuck at a number. I wanted 850. Well, we ended up having a fire in that property like 6 or 7 months later after we took it off the market. And it was a godsend. Like, sure, my wife and I went through hell through that. Like right before we got married, we were almost broke. We were spending like everything's on our credit card. We had our own property. We hadn't gotten married. We were renovating our own property. That we had a contractor who was kind of screwing us over. Like when I say we were broke, we were broke. But we were able to fix a lot of the pains that we had of the old property. We were able to revamp the property. Long story short, one of my tenants was messing around with my electrical panel and it caused the fire. We had to kick everybody out. But with the insurance money, we explained what was going on. We were able to revamp it. And like now, I still own that property because we fixed the pain points. That property, which could have been devastating to us, absolutely demolished us. That fire could have demolished my wife and I even before we got married. It led to something beautiful. To this point now, I think that property is worth about $3.5 million.
Wow.
Since 2008. So that's one of the things that's like, again, you got to like knowing something and listening to my dad's knowledge. Unfortunately, my dad passed away before I got my license, but he would always say things like this to me. He was like, Dave, don't sell a property unless you have to. And if you have to sell that property, buy another property or buy 2 properties, but don't just sell it for the money. The money's going to go. Like, do you need another fancy car? Do you need another watch? Do you need no, that stuff it's going to lose its value. God only made a certain amount of land. And when you own that land, it'll always, over time, will earn you money. So if you can sell one property to buy 2, that's the ideal situation, or 3, et cetera. Or use the equity without purchasing, without selling that property and having to pay the tax man, then having to move that over and buy other properties with still owning that. That's the ideal situation. And at the time, you didn't think about that because when I was trying to sell in 2008, my dad's like, you're an idiot. What are you doing? And that's where that comment came from because I was like, well, you don't know how many problems I'm having. You don't know this. And he goes, yeah, I've only been doing this for like 40 years. Sure. I don't know what you're talking about, but you don't listen to that because you don't think that they're in the same position. Like, oh, you don't know what I'm in there. Oh, you don't know. That's right. You don't know because it's like, you need to learn. And I learned quick. But it was like, I was wrong. I was completely wrong.
Oh yeah, it seems like your father was a very wise man, and that perseverance is something that I don't think too many people are born with, if at all. It's something that you have to learn. And being that you're a hockey player from Canada, it reminds me of a joke that I just recently heard. It was this young kid watering a garden, and a customer comes up and says, "Hey, I want half a head of cabbage." And then the young kid working, he cuts the water off and he says, "Well, sir, we don't sell it like that." And the man he grabs the young kid and he says, "I want half a head of cabbage." So he says, "Okay, sir." And he goes to the back to the owner and he says, "Hey, sir, it's some jerk out there that wants to buy half a head of cabbage." And just as he said it, he turns around and the man's right behind him. He says, and this nice fella here wants the other half. So the owner said, "Yeah, go ahead and do that." So your young kid goes and he cuts the half a head of cabbage and he gives it to the customer and he goes back to watering the garden. And the business owner comes out and he says, "Hey man, you're very quick on your feet. That was very smart of you to think that way. Where are you from?" He says, "Yeah, I'm from Canada." And the man says, "Oh, you're from Canada, huh?" He said, "Yeah, man, I know. Only hockey players and whores come from Canada." And the man says, "Well, my wife comes from Canada." He says, "Oh, really? What team does she play for?"
I think you're saying, what position does she play? That's like,
but that was a good joke, man. I just heard it today, and I think I delivered it pretty well.
You're awesome. I hadn't heard that, but I could see the line of. I'm like, oh, I might like. As soon as you said that, I'm like, I know exactly where you're heading to that. I may use that one.
Oh yeah, you definitely got to use it. And speaking of perseverance, I'm imagining that's a difference between an investor and a typical person. How do you think like an investor?
Well, in this type of market, for example, like when the whole masses are worried about like selling properties when because the market is low, an investor looks at it differently. Like, where's my opportunities? How can I pull my money and buy as much as I possibly can? You don't make money in the stock market when the market starts to go high. You make it when you buy low and you sell high. But a lot of times people get too nervous about that even when it comes to invest because it's larger property. So that's one of the things that definitely is the difference between an investor. A good investor in this type of market is gobbling properties up. And even now, it's like, so they'll see the fundamentals and they're not to say we're taking advantage of some of the others, but they're seeing the potential of the bargains. And I talk a lot about that on my Instagram channel. I do like at least a number of videos, and we talk about like opportunities. And the pushback I get from people that don't understand is for somebody is like who hasn't taken that opportunity to see where it is like, oh, you're just saying that because you're trying to you're saying it's a good time to buy because you just want to have more sales. I'm like, no, because I'm not talking to my clients. I'm talking to people in general. That's not going to translate for sales for me. It's for you to change your mentality and how you're looking at things. So, and the people I always notice the nastiest people are the ones that, can't afford or think they can't afford a property. So the other thing was when somebody comes up to me and they're like, I can never afford, I'd rather rent. And I said, well, have you talked? Then that's where my expertise comes in. I'm like, listen, have you talked to a mortgage broker? Have you talked to a mortgage specialist? Have you actually gone through the process to find out that you don't own a property and that's why you rent? If that's the case, then I understand. Maybe you do need to rent. Maybe you are a renter. And 95 to 99% of the time, they're like, no, I just listen to the media. They say it's too much, it's too expensive for me to rent. And now we have all these government programs helping, like, well, did you know about this? We have a first-time home buyer program. There is this program. And did you know that you only have to put like 5 to 10% down? And like, they have no clue. So yeah, I find that like the lack of information, they're feeding off of the media telling them everything's wrong. Where an investor is going to know these kinds of things. It's like, yeah, feed them all the bad news, let the market go down, and I'm going to have cash on hand, and I'm going to buy all these properties. And in 3 years' time, I'm going to sell it back to those people that said that the market was crashing, and I'm going to make triple the amount. Or I'm going to hold on to it and rent to those people that say that they can rent. Now I'm buying it at a low property level, and now my cash flow works that I don't have to sell the property, and I can carry that property for the next 15 years because I purchased it low, not because of the interest rates. Don't worry about the interest rates come and go. And we are here in Canada, we're different. We negotiate anywhere, 3, 5, 7 years. We don't get 30-year mortgages or 25-year mortgages like you do. Our amortization is on that period of time. That means the amount of time to pay it off. But a typical period for a mortgage is 5 years. And then you negotiate. So after 5 years, so I would say like 90% of people get a 5-year mortgage, and it's amortized over 25 years. So it takes you 25 years to pay it, but you're going to have to negotiate 5 times within owning that property if you own it for 25 years. And the rate changes every time, and you negotiate every time based on what the market's saying. But the good news about that is every 5 years, you're paying principal and interest. So which means when you're negotiating 5 years, now your principal is decreased. So you're paying less on principal. So your payments should become less and less unless the interest rates double. But even still, even if the interest rates double, because your principal is decreased, your monthly payments should be less in the next 5 years if you do everything right. So yeah, it's different, right? I know you guys do different. I have a ton of friends. I have friends in Wisconsin and Florida. They're all realtors. We talk Texas. We talk about this all the time. And they look at me as if I'm like have 7 heads. I'm like, what do you mean you have to negotiate every 3 to 5 years? And I'm like, yeah, we can negotiate variable. We can negotiate fixed rates. We can actually change our amortization. So if you want to pay it off earlier, you can pay it off earlier depending on, what you have, like what kind of a mortgage policy you have. So if you want to, someone will allow you to pay a certain amount down. You can have an open mortgage where you can pay everything outright if you want to, but you're paying more on a monthly basis for something like that. So we have a much more variable payment plan when it comes to mortgages. It's not like you guys have where you have 30 or 40 years to pay off. Well, I heard you guys are some of them did I hear this right? You might get a 50-year mortgage now. Is that going to be passed by government?
That's what I heard. That's what they're putting out there. And because the way you describe it, that sounds like the equivalent of an adjustable rate mortgage. Because you got people. The typical is a 30-year mortgage, but I guess if it's fixed, the safety mindset is all right. I can float with this fixed amount monthly for the next 30 years. But what you're saying is what should be happening because the amortization is expedited. when you do negotiate, most likely it should be less. But I imagine that there are times when it's not always less. What happens if somebody doesn't want to negotiate?
Well, that's the thing. So, like, if you're with the same institution, a lot of times they'll just roll it over with a newer rate. So you don't have to, go to a new mortgage broker to qualify for a mortgage. And if you can't make those payments, that's why a lot of times they'll sell or look for other options, right? So, like, that's what we're having now. So what happened in 2021 was that our interest rate was at overnight rate was at 0.25%, right? 25 basis points. Like, I had a mortgage rate of 1.15%. It was ridiculously low. But then we really, with the inflation got so high that they increased the interest rates by 4.5% within 6 months. And that, I was on a variable rate, which means my rate went from 1.15, add another 4.5% to that. So all of a sudden went from 1.15 to over close to 6% within 3 to 4 months. My mortgage payments went from, and I think it was like $6,800 to over, which was principal and interest. But on a variable rate, because they increased the interest rates so high, I was paying almost $11,000 a month in interest only. Nothing went towards principal. It hurt us big time. So that's something that that's the risk in which you can face. But, again, we didn't think that it was going to go that percentage. The government told us, and the Bank of Canada said, oh no, we're not going to increase interest rates more than 1%. I figured with the rate, I'm like maybe 2%. I didn't think that they were going to go up 4.5% to curb inflation and handcuff people. But the people that had fixed rate and fixed in their rate, what we're seeing now is that now we're at the end of the 5 years coming up in 2026. And there's more foreclosures going to happen this year because they cannot afford to renew their mortgage. So that is a rate, because what happened with those interest rates so low, again, remember I said, don't always go with the rate. That's going to increase the amount of your pay. We had an average rate go up. That's our average sale price hit 1.35 million, 1.335 million dollars. Well, the average price right now is at $1,040,000, right? So we're $300,000 less in today's market than we were 4 years ago. So that'll play into what your property's worth. Because a lot of times, if you want to move here from an institution to another institution, A, you have to qualify, and the qualifications are much harder today than they were 5 years ago. And B, the new institution is going to want to know what the value of your property is. And some of these properties could be turned upside down. So if I'll give you an example. I am selling a property right now that we just listed for we had to list it for 175. We dropped it to 1.68 million dollars. Well, the sellers had purchased it for 4 years in 2021 for $2 million. So their mortgage is based on that $2 million purchase. So when they go to, if we don't sell, they have to renew, the value which they have is going to be less because they didn't write down, like right now we're trying to sell for 1.65. Well, the values decreased more than $350,000 that they paid. They didn't pay down that amount. So they're going to have to either go for a lender, which will, a B lender, which they're going to have to pay a higher interest rate, or they may have to put in more money just to get a mortgage, just to cover because the bank can only cover 80% of your purchase price here. So say you bought $1 million property. Well, they will only, over $1.5 million. You could only you have to put 20% down. There's no choice. So if you're in that kind of situation, if you can't come up with that up to 80%, you're going to have to pay the difference to come up. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see what's going to happen this year, especially if the market continues to be depressed the way it's been the last few years.
I mean, you got an interesting choice of words, interesting and depressed. I'm pretty sure working with somebody like you can avoid the interest so you won't be so depressed, right?
It's a good way of putting it. Well, yeah, because I guess lower. But that word just because people do get depressed when they look at their mortgage payments every month. Yeah.
Now, and speaking of depressing, right? I imagine because usually people here that I know of that are in real estate, usually they start with the real estate license, and then they see all of these investors making so much money, and they get depressed, and then they become investors, right? Or impressed. Right? They get depressed, then impressed, then depressed. But it sounds like you did it the opposite way. You invested in real estate and then got your license. What made you do it in that order?
Well, I was an analyst when so I was a treasury analyst for 10 years, well, 9.5 years an analyst before. And I was buying the property. I was buying investment properties because tax shelters certain ways, like you're able to build wealth through that. So, and not to mention at the end of tax time, because you're able with the write-offs, that's one of the things about owning properties here is that you're able to write off a certain amount of money and get, cash back from the government after they take off away from your check. So that's how we kind of got started. And then I was buying and selling properties. And to be honest with you, I was not happy with all the realtors I was dealing with. Actually, a lot of them were like, if I can say subpar, I'm giving them a compliment, right? So I didn't want to really be associated with this type of people. Like they left such a bad taste in my mouth. It was not a good experience purchasing them or selling them. It was just, it was like, no, I don't want to be associated with this. But what happened was in 2014, we had a renter that was one of our properties down the street here, and we ended up having a crack foundation. So she was actually an executive at Target. So she had to move out, and thank God her lease was up. And that's right before Target left Canada, because if she would stay longer, we would have been vacant anyway. So we had to fix up the property, and we're like, so my wife and I were talking about it, like, listen, like we can sell this one, maybe move it to another investment property. And we fixed up the property, and my brother-in-law, who's a great agent, so he's not in that category, but he basically leaned on us. We're like, hey, listen, we're taking over the property. We're fixing up. My wife staged it. We did all the work we needed to do. I told him about the pictures and the stuff we wanted to do, where to price it. And we ended up he just listened to what we said. And he's like, okay, yeah, let's just do that. And my strategy worked. And I was like, that's interesting that he used my strategy to make money. And it was like, okay, so maybe it's not that far. Again, by this point, I've been doing this for 10 years. So I kind of knew you see things and you're looking at what's the trends of what's happening. But because of the bad taste in my mouth, I didn't want to be a realtor. Well, fast forward from that, I went through that same year, I went through 7 bosses at work. There was a whole lot of restructuring happening. And I had this one boss for a year and a half. And I knew the writing was on the wall that one by one, we were all getting packaged out. So finally came to my turn and I got packaged. I literally went into the office. I said, oh, so you guys are finally letting me go. It was like, he was kind of shocked. He looked at me and goes, well, it's not because of your performance. I'm like, I know, I'm good at what I do. But it was like just having confidence. And I remember talking to the HR girl when I was cleaning up and it's a humbling experience getting,
of course,
getting the thing slipped. And she was looking at me and she's like, are you okay? And I said, why? And she's like, you're taking this really, really well. I'm like, well, I saw the writing on the wall. I just kind of figured out I was mentally prepared for it. I didn't love what I was doing. I wasn't excelling to the where, like when you play at a high level of any kind of sporting event, like sports, doesn't matter what you're playing, you're used to being up here. And you're just, when you take over, like, if I go to a sporting event, like you're the one everybody's talking about. You're this. And so I felt in my job, I was just kind of like a plugger, like, I don't know, whatever, if you're playing football, you're just kind of like guys sitting on the sideline, you kind of play all the plays, but like, you're not a superstar. And it was like, that's not my experience, what I was happy with. Right. So when I got packaged out, I was like, okay, well, what can I do that I can be the star, kind of sense, like, what can I do? This is where the entrepreneurial side came in. I was like, well, I've been helping people get into investment properties for 10 years at this point, just using my blueprint. Why don't I come up with a business in which I can help I can identify properties that are great for investors that they can potentially invest. If the property is not up to par, if it's not already in, like, say you buy a bungalow and it's not already into 2 or 3 units, I can, use my network and we can help fix it up. And then, so if you use my guys, so I can help identify the property, we can fix the property to make it as an investment property, not just a regular residential. And then at the end of it, if you want, the third package I had was the property management. Why don't I run the property for you for 6 months for free if you do the other 2 packages? And then in that time, right, like you can see what it's like, especially for new landlords that don't know how to do this. It'll get your feet running. We'll walk you through it. If you want to continue that, then we'll give you a payment plan for the property management. So that was the idea. And then my dad had all these properties, and I was like, so I was identifying his properties, which I was going to revamp. And at the time I lent him some money and I said, listen, instead of paying me back, why don't we do this? Why don't I fix up the properties while I'm identifying the issues with, and I'll use it as my portfolio. And then you pay me back whatever it is, and I'll show it to the bank in case I have to go for money. I was like, listen, I already have some steady income. I have a client. So I already had it all set up. So, and then between my financial planner and I, we were talking about it. He liked the idea. We were bouncing ideas. I had a whole business plan ready to go to get investors involved. But we're like, how do I make money on this? How do I monetize this business, right? So where are the pain points in here which I can figure out, and where is the glaring hole, the gap in which I can make the most amount of money? And it came glaringly obvious to me that the realtor was the biggest pain point. Now, at this point, again, didn't want to be associated with realtors, left a really bad taste in my mouth. The people I associated, I'm like, I don't want to be a realtor. I don't want to be a sleazy car salesman. I don't want to deal with these guys. I'm like, this is not what I want to do. But with my license, I'm able to look at the MLS system. I can find out where these properties are lying. If I can negotiate, something on my own, I can keep that as a profit for me as the realtor. But basically to help run the business, not thinking I would do this full time. So I'm like, okay. So I made the decision to do my license, and unfortunately, my dad passed away 4 days before my first license. Mm-hmm. And I always talk about spirituality. I'm a Christian, right? I became Christian in 2009. It was like I was Catholic before, different story. But it's funny how God talks to you in certain ways, right? So I remember when my dad passed away, and he was like, and I was like, with us Italians, we were up late, drinking, doing all stuff too, and I didn't study. And I remember my uncle and my aunt were saying to me, like, listen, you have an exam, and like, you don't have to take this exam. You can, reschedule. They'll understand your dad just passed away. I'm like, no, something's telling me to take this exam. My dad wanted me to do this. This is part of the legacy. Without studying, I got 100% on the first exam. And I was like, maybe something's there. But remember we talked about if you would have told me, what you know now back then, I wouldn't listen. I wouldn't listen to God. I wouldn't listen to myself. I wouldn't listen to my abilities. I'm like, no chance am I going to be a realtor. I'm not going to be a sleazy car salesman. Then I took the second course. And then back when we did those courses, we physically went into the classroom. And I remember talking to the teacher, and the teacher was, talking about renovation stuff. And I kept putting up my hand, and she was wrong about all of these things. And I was like, well, she hasn't done any renovations. She's been a realtor for 20 years, but she's never been entrenched in actual renovation. So I kept correcting her. And so then afterwards, she's like, so people are asking me questions and stuff to supposed to, and her. And then when it came to math, I've my Bachelor of Science degrees in business and a minor in math. I used to be a math major, believe it or not. I love math. I love everything about math. My kids, when they come for school, I'm like, do you have any math homework we can work on? But we would have mathematical equation stuff, and I would write down, and the teacher would come up to me and say, did I do this right? And so I'm thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, you're the teacher. You've been doing this for 20 years. Again, this is not helping the situation. I'm like, again, why would I associate myself with somebody who doesn't even know what they're doing? And these are the people selling properties. But I should have looked at it this way. It's like, you can help all these people. Like, you can be a beacon of help, and you can help us. And that's why when I did my third course, I came home one day and something clicked. And I was sitting in class, and it said, you're looking at this wrong. Instead of beating up the other realtors, you can help other realtors. You can help people not go through the pitfalls that you went through when you had this experiences with these bad realtors. So you can elevate the real estate experience for somebody, and you can help other realtors at the same time. And that's what I did. And so I came home one day, and I said to my wife, I think I'm supposed to be a realtor. She started laughing at me. She goes, took you long enough. We've all known this. Your friends have all said this. Everybody that knows you said you'd be really good at this. You're the only one pushing back. So when I actually decided then to become a realtor, changed my car, changed everything. I was getting a little gruffer, I had beard, cleaned back up and stuff. Because it's like a breakup, right? When you break up with a long-term girlfriend, the next girlfriend you date is total opposite from what you did before, right? And my wife did the same thing. When we broke up last time, she dated a guy who was totally different from me. But then you realize, then you settle back, I'm like, let's go back to what you know, right? What you got at. So I let my hair grow longer and a beard. I'm like, it wasn't me, right? I was trying to do physical labor. It wasn't me. So I literally revamped back to where I was, as you see now. And I just hit the ground running. And then that was a huge catalyst. And so having the mentality to be able to help people was the driving force behind me. And I still say that's behind my success. And I still tell to people to this day is I had zero clue how much money realtors make or potentially could make. I had no idea. That was never a driving force. I never even thought about once. All I remember saying to my wife was, I calculated, I was making $100,000 as an analyst, just over that. I said, as long as I can bring that home, our family will not suffer. And I don't want the kids to go have any different lifestyle changes because I decided to do this on my own. So that was the whole nutshell. And that's what happened. Right. And since then, then I started to realize you can even help more and more people. And it just started evolving. And then I also love real estate because I have a very creative mind. Like my kids are very, very creative. They both got into like a really prestigious art school here. It's an outlet. Like when I do videos and like listing stuff and getting on TV and stuff, it's a creative outlet. So I have both sides of my brain working. So investors, I run numbers, I run spreadsheets, when I do my commercial stuff, that satisfies that side of the brain. But when I can do videos and things like this satisfies the creative side of my brain. So it's the most fulfilling job I've had, and it doesn't feel like a job because I'm pretty satisfied. Don't get me wrong, it's stressful. It's stressful, but I love it because I think you can do both sides and have both sides of your brain working if you do it right.
Oh, yeah. One of the things that sounds corny but true is you do something you love, you never have to work a day in your life. And it seems like what you did, you noticed the problem. And even though it initially repelled you, you decided to be the change that you seek. And one of the quotes that I coined is be the change you seek and watch the change repeat. Somebody has already said be the change that you want to see in the world. But, I'm a wordsmith, so I had to add a little more to it. Be the change you seek and watch the change repeat. Speaking of hopefully watching that change repeat, because I think it's a lot of people who watch HGTV. How does one get a show on HGTV? And I believe that's Home and Garden Television.
Yeah. So we had a season. We were so believe it or not, it was one of those situations where I was trying to work on videos. This is back in 2018. Videos were starting to really take over social media, right? Everything was kind of like pushing. And I was kind of learning how to do videos on my own, trying to kind of like push that way. And I remember I came across this guy's name is Keenan Wong. He lives in New York City, and he's an Academy Award nominee and for filmmaking, right? And I remember I saw an ad for him. They're like, hey, if you want to work with us, and they show him this real estate stuff, really cool videos and stuff too. We can teach you. We can help you with that. So I hired him, right? I hired him on the spot, and he was in New York. We would do everything online, and he was kind of teaching me how things will work. And I thought, so part of that package was we had a lifestyle video, which is a couple minutes long, and a couple of other reels we did as well. Well, a client or a friend of mine, I can't remember, they sent me this open casting call. And it kind of coincided at the same time when this video was prepared. And they're like, tell us a little about yourself, open casting call for an HGTV show. And at the time, I think there's 5 of us. They wanted us to be in Toronto, like 5 co-hosts, and they wanted to hit, I guess, all different types of demographics. We didn't know what they were looking for. So they had thousands and thousands of people like to the casting call. So I gave him my bio, and I also gave him that video, and I showed him like some of my credentials at this point. At that point, I think I was only in the game maybe 3-4 years, and I was already in the top, 2% nationally, I think, at that point. And it was like I risen to a really good level. And I got a casting call back, and it was just like, I just didn't even think it was, I'm like, sure, I'll put this video in. Sure. You know what I mean? Like, you don't think it's actually going to work out. And then I got an interview, and I heard nothing for a year. And all of a sudden, it was a random, I think it was April, 2019 or something. I got a phone call. They're like, hey, remember that, casting call you did? Like, well, we picked you to be on their show. And I'm like, but you can't say anything to anybody. And I was like, holy crap. So we did all the filming and stuff. And that's kind of what happened, right? It was just, and we kind of snowballed from there. From there, the problem was we were on HGTV in 2020. We went live in 2020, and we had a great following. We were supposed to have second and third season, but the world shut down. And HGTV kind of cut down. So we were supposed to have a second and third season, but what happened was we were always a maybe. They had some, when they were able to start productions again, they had 3 or 4 shows which already had started production, so they already spent money on them. We hadn't started second season yet because we were bouncing ideas around. And then there's a bunch of people they said no to. So till this day, they haven't said no. They're still we're still a maybe. We're supposed to have this other, more of a season. So, but a couple of our other my castmates had started their own TV shows. So anyway, long story short, it's basically an open casting call, and I always suggest to people all the time. It's something that you're interested in. Put your name forth all the time. What do you have to lose, right? People get along with your personality. You never know what people are looking for when you're doing those casting calls. So absolutely try everything, every angle you possibly can. Do a lot of things like this, like different podcasts, talk to people, let them see your personality and let your personality shine through. You never know what's going to happen.
Oh yeah. So if any of the fans of Hot Market want to see David Cinelli come back, go make sure you sending those letters in, sending those tweets in, sending those Instagrams in, sending everything, letting them know that you want Hot Market back because they haven't said no. So you're saying maybe a yes, right?
The funny thing with our show, the funny thing was our show was like after the first the trajectory is different. This is why it was very appealing. And it was like $1 million listing for Toronto. But what was happening was like when you first have a show, like you get some viewership and then it dramatically drops off and then they kind of comes back. Ours was the opposite. It had here, and then we just every week we kind of get more and more people. So that's why we're very intrigued. And I didn't realize how many people saw us. And then they started to syndicate us till this day. They still syndicating our shows in other countries.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's and even now it's like it's been a few years, but it's like we have people in South Africa that recognize you and stuff. It's just it's interesting. It's a good market. So it's like, yeah. So I think until that well dries up, maybe they're still trying to figure out what's happening. But I would love to be a part of another episode.
Oh, nice. Yeah. If you're still getting syndications, there's always a possibility. Right. Definitely. And speaking of luxury real estate, I see that wainscoting that you got in the back. Do y'all call it wainscoting in Canada?
We do, yeah.
And that's one of the telltale signs of luxury real estate. What would you say are the differences between luxury real estate and just real estate? And are there telltale signs when it comes to that?
I would say mostly, like you're saying, you picked on something which, maybe the naked eye doesn't always see, is like those details, right? And it's the craftsmanship, right? So like behind me here, we have a real wainscoting. So, and it's not MDF, it's real wood. So you can tell that MDF is, if people don't know that, it's like a fake wood, it's not really, it's a manufactured wood. That is a huge difference, right? Like knowing the quality of the work, the flooring type too, whether it's an engineered or if it's not, the different type of wood, like that matters. So when you're walking through something simple, like, now we'll welcome my clients walk through $3 or $4 million homes. Some of the homes have solid doors and like really high end, like high ceilings. That's a good listing. And then if you look at the doors, if the doors are only 8 foot tall and you have 10-foot ceilings, that tells you right there is like they cheaped out on the money. If they're cheaping out there, what else are they cheaping out on? So there's things like that. The door handles, like these are subtle things which you can tell from a higher end listing as opposed to, of course, you have things like elevators and those kinds of like which some of my clients buy, which that's not a regular home, but we're seeing actually elevators more and more. But I would say that like the small details are huge. And little things like, and here's what you have to look for is light switches is something that people don't pay attention to all the time. And that's something that I pick up on too, because when I bought this house, we bought it 4 years ago, like we have something called Control 4. Each one of our light switches is $175 to $350 each light switch. And you only get those in luxury links. So when we came and we revamped it, it cost me over $25,000 just to change the light switches and make sure it was on our own programming. Now that's an infrastructure. Obviously somebody beforehand had spent a lot more money for all the wiring stuff too, but that tells you right there, not every single house has that stuff. So smart homes, like, when you're looking at like, thermostats, like that, the age of the roof, not all roofs are created equal, right? If you have a metal roof, for example, depending on the peak and the gauge. So if you look at a metal roof, for example, there's the different thicknesses matters, right? So the thicker the gauge of the roof can last a lifetime. Well, you're paying double or triple for that, which the naked eye doesn't see, right? So those are like small small little details of which you should pay attention. And obviously, everyone looks at kitchens and bathrooms and things like, but bathrooms matter, right? Like heated floors, right? Like where is a type of heated floors? Like what type of flooring is it on? Like what size is the tile? If you're having smaller tile, unless it's decorative, like the really, really small one, the larger the tile means it's more luxury, right? The type of flooring you have, if you have a herringbone, do you have a chevron? Those types, the chevrons are like this. Herringbone is like, it's a different, they look like the triangles, right? The two different types. But that is double the price, right? So that just gives you that extra feel that it's like, we're in luxury right now, right? So yeah, like little things like that. And obviously staying with the trends. You don't want to, no offense to IKEA, but you don't want to walk into a $5 million home and see IKEA kitchens. And you can tell the difference.
Oh yeah, it's funny that you mentioned those things. I actually recently started a new YouTube channel called Affluent Abodes, and I point out those things. You know, the difference between the chevron and the herringbone, the control floor, the ceiling height, the double high ceilings, the pot filler. Right? You can't charge no one over $1 million without having a pot filler. Right? And how to look at the floors. Is nothing wrong with a luxury vinyl plank, but if you're spending millions of dollars for a house, you want to look and notice that, all right, typically if it's a engineered floor and a luxury vinyl plank, they usually only make 5 different designs. And if you study that floor, you can see that design repeat. But if it's an actual natural wood, then that design won't repeat like that. So yeah, it's a lot of little things. You know, the waterfall edge of the islands and things of that nature. I'm going to send you a link to my my YouTube channel. It's slowly growing. I'm sure it's no hot market, but it's getting there.
You're hitting like a lot of the play. And what was the other thing? You said something here too, was with the kitchen. That was not the pot filler. What was it? I was just going to say too.
The waterfall edge.
Waterfall edge is huge. Ours has an oversized island over here, which doesn't have the waterfall, but it was more unique because it's more modern. So it was one that, and we have a step down into which we use as our kitchen, which is fantastic. But the ceiling height does matter. That is huge, but not the pot filler. Ours is ceiling. But one thing is I remember that was I remember. I had a listing in which it was a client of mine, and he was renovating. His dad had passed away, but he wanted to renovate the property. And this was a $2.5 million home, like $2 to $2.5 million home. And we're like, and he was, unfortunately, you can't listen to your contractors all the time. You have to bring in a realtor that knows how to sell like luxury real estate. And we had talked to him. I'm like, he was going to put luxury vinyl plank throughout the whole home. I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you
almost called him an idiot.
I was like, listen, do not listen to this idiot. I'm like, exactly. My wife came in too. We're all like, and like, listen, I'm like, trust us. Put hardwood. It's like, you need to put hardwood. And the second thing you also need to do is like, first open up the kitchen. If you're going to open that up, have a nice island, because that's like the focal point of the home. But in this, what we're noticing for 90% of the homes, you're going to have a gas range. Gas is like shows luxury. Now, there are some amazing electrical ranges, but let's be honest, like you got a Wolf stove, they're gas. You know, got the printed so realize we have Dacor. Like there's like even like Gen Air has like their higher end stuff. The gas ones, it's even if you never cook in your life, the look of a gas stove is what people love. They just, oh my God, I love this. So so we're like, put in a gas line. It made a huge difference, because just for some reason people associate luxury with gas ranges. And if you can't stick with, like for luxury, you can't have a 30-inch stove. You just can't. 30 inches. Like, I can put that in an apartment. Like, why do I want a 30-inch stove? Like, no, you got to start at like 42 inches and above. If you have double size oven, again, you're spending a lot of money. You want the convenience of having the higher end like stove and the range and those and have high end appliances. So you don't necessarily need to have Wolf. I think everybody knows Wolf. I'm assuming in your marketplace, you know, Wolf.
Oh yeah, Wolf appliances.
Knobs. The other thing is, if you're buying a Wolf, and I laugh at my sister-in-law, she swapped out her red knobs for silver. I'm like, nobody knows it's a Wolf. You're paying for the red knobs. Keep the red knobs. You might not some people say, well, I don't like the way it looks. I'm like, you're buying Wolf. Wolf's known for the red knobs. If you ever sell this house, put those red knobs back on, because that's what people are looking for.
Oh yeah, it's all about the perception and things just so small as the shower having a shower niche or niche, right? I like to say niche because niche rhyme with rich, and there are riches in the niches, right? But yeah, it's just those little things that distinguish the luxury real estate that you do.
Do you go into like integrated fridges as opposed to like just standalone fridges? Integrated fridges are, integrated fridges like what?
Oh no, enlighten me.
So an integrated fridge, right? So we've had some people that purchase a property, and instead of doing so, an integrated fridge means basically you have like your paneling over here.
Oh, the panel covered appliances. Okay.
and cover the paneling. But I don't know if you can see ours, but ours is also integrated with stainless steel. So the Wolf and Sub-Zero, they actually have one. Either you can have it paneled or you can have the stainless steel, but it's flush with your cabinetry. So that's integrated, and they're much taller, right? So when you open up, everything's behind there. You can't pull it out. It's already fixed in there. So that screams luxury. But there are people that try to cut corners. So we had in our old house, we had a beautiful paneled, my wife did a whole brand new kitchen, black paneled, like it was gorgeous. Everything else, we had a nice little hutch you put in, you pull out, or we have it here too, but you have it, your espresso machine. That's all these really cool things. Even the kitchen was big, but it screamed luxury, right? And then we had somebody else, we're trying to sell a property, and they liked the look of the integrated, but didn't want to pay for it, because an integrated fridge, if even without the paneling here, it's starting around $11,000 to $15,000, starting at the lower end. So Sub-Zero is like $20,000, right? Like a fridge, just a fridge without the paneling. Then you have to pay somebody to put the paneling on again. So it's one of those things that screams luxury. So, but I've seen people try to cheat, and what they'll do is they'll buy a regular fridge, and they'll buy a counter depth. So a counter depth fridge means that they're not as wide. So a regular size fridge is larger than the counter, and it'll stick out like a sore thumb. Mm-hmm. So they'll get a counter depth, which is supposed to be flush, but then they'll panel it, but it looks ridiculous. It still looks like you cheaped out. You didn't want to pay the integrated. You didn't want to pay the extra $5,000 to $10,000 to make it look all unified. And to this day, it's like every time, like everything else in the kitchen looks. I've seen it few more times than I like to count. A few more times I like to count. One of our friends has it done. We can't say shit to those people. And it was like, but we look at it, I'm like, you shouldn't have did that. And it's hard. You can't go back, right? It's like, because especially when you're doing a custom kitchen, you have to give the specs of the appliances when you're building your kitchen. So it's not like you can now reverse it and just say, well, now I want to do an integrated fridge. So somebody, you got to like it. And if it sticks out, like if that's the focal point, it looks like an eyesore. So yeah, that's, yeah.
And it's good to have a consultant like you, because if you plan on making this your forever home, then yeah, who cares what David or Randolph is saying. But if this is a house that you plan on eventually selling in the future at a premium, then you need to talk about these things beforehand, right? David, is there a question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, I think most of the time people just ask me where to find me, and I'm just my Instagram. I think that's about it. That's usually the last question. But no, I think you hit on a lot of things which I love. I'm like, maybe one thing you might have asked me was, do I still love the game? And that's a huge question. I think that I still absolutely love this job, and I wouldn't trade this for anything. And again, this is one of the things you wouldn't have. We talked about this earlier, that we're tying this all together now, Randall. It's like I'm at a point right now. It's like, if you would have told me 15 years ago, I would have absolutely loved this job, but I thought you're absolutely crazy. There's no way, right? But you only know what you know. And it's like, the thing is, what keeps my love going for this over and over is helping people. But the second thing is always learning new ways of presenting properties and figuring new ways and how to, like, now we're using a lot of AI. We're getting into properties. We're doing all this other things. So I think that's probably the last question I'm saying. Do I still love what I'm doing? I'm like, every day. So we're taking a little purposeful break right now, and it's kind of killing. It's only day one of relaxing. And it's like, it's not my jam, man. It's not my jam.
Oh yeah, it's not your jam, but sometimes it's good to use jelly, right? And just like you said, you only know what you know, but I'm imagining, like myself and other ambitious people have discovered, the more you know, the more you know, the more you don't know. So it is good to be doing something that you love so that you can get through the ebbs and flows that we all have to deal with when it comes to us getting better every day in every way. Please remind people who you are, what you do, and how they can get in touch.
All right. So again, it's David Cinelli. I'm a realtor here in Toronto. Best way to, let's say the top 1% here. The best way to contact me if you want to see what I do, I usually say go to my Instagram. It's David, David, V as in Victor. Actually, middle name is Vincent. And then my last name is spelled Cinelli, Cinelli _realtor. And there you can follow my link tree for all of my other apps, even some of my lots of my videos I do on my YouTube, including my own podcast, which I had before called DC Talks. So yeah, follow me there and see if you ever have any questions, always DM me. I do have an assistant, but I answer most of my DMs. She usually doesn't answer. So it's when you get a response, it's me, not her. So I do respond to people, especially on Instagram.
Man, that's good. You shared a lot of great information with the Entrepreneurs podcast audience. And remember, if you're listening to this episode, make sure that you check the show notes so that you can see more ways to get in contact with David, as well as you can click the link to see the video and observe our beautiful ebony and ivory faces if you want it in your places, right? This has been another episode of the Entrepreneurs Podcast, a place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. I am your host, Randolph Love III. And until next time, don't play with it, stay with it until you make pay with it. Until next time, signing off.